This is part 2 of our talk about something referred to as sacred action. So for those of you who haven't been here, we're following a year-long theme. It's called The Calling. The Calling has 4 parts: sacred listening, sacred discernment, sacred action, and sacred embodiment. This is the 3rd quarter. The first 2 quarters we talked about sacred listening and sacred discernment, and this is about sacred action. Last week we spent some time talking about this concept, this idea, well, what do we do with this thing called sacred action? What do we do with it, right? And I said, well, what is sacred action? And I talked about sacred action as being the action that's necessary in order for you to follow your calling. Remember, your calling isn't necessary, well, what is my purpose? Your calling is something that is going on continuously. There's not just one calling in your life. Actually, there can be many callings in your life. And we talked about that last week. But the action that needs to be taken in order to fulfill that calling. It's not a matter of if you're being called. It's a matter of, are you listening and are you taking action to respond to that thing that your soul is calling you to? It can look like a lot of different things. So it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of a thing. But the sacred action is the part that's necessary in order for you to follow your calling. Because what we said is nothing will happen or change if you don't take any action. I used the analogy about going to a gym, walking in a gym and looking at all the equipment and all the people working out and going, wow, that's really cool. And then I walk out the door and I don't do anything, right? That's kind of what it's like. So we've got this thing that's happening. It's the calling. We slow down enough and we listen. What is it? What is this thing that's going on? And then all of a sudden it's like we go through this discernment process. Okay, great. I think I hear it. I'm not sure, but I think I hear it. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Now I know what it's telling me. Now what do I need to do? I need to start taking some action, right? But then I said, unfortunately, there's a couple things that shuts that down every single time. Certainly, I've had that in my own life, my experience of it. What is it? Yeah, but I don't know how. I don't know how to do this thing I'm being called to do. And what I talked about last week is this idea, this thought that the ego is extremely comfortable with where you're at right now. It does not want you to go over here. It's very happy with you being right here, and it's going to try to convince you to stay right here. But there's a problem. What's the problem? The problem is your soul is going, yo, Mike, come on, let's go. But what do we do? Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know how to do that. And so the ego has all these little games it plays to get you not to move forward in your own calling. Anybody have that experience? Yeah. Yes, and so that's what happens. So then we've got this thing in our heart that's saying, hey, let's move forward, let's go here, let's do this thing. And then the ego's trying to say, yeah, but I don't know how. I don't know what to do. And so what do? Nothing. We sit there and we don't do anything, right? And so we talked about this last week. And then we also talked about the 3 different keys when it came to taking sacred action. The first thing is trust that your how will come. So in other words, get your ego out of the way and trust that whatever it is or however it is or whatever needs to be done will come. But you have to be willing to do this one little thing. Take the first step. That's it. Take the first step and the rest of it will show up. It has to. Why? Because of who and what you are and who and what the universe is. And the universe is sitting, like I said earlier, right behind you going, brother, sister, take one step. We need you to take one step, and then it will stand behind you. And oh, dear God, it's like you put up the sail and the winds are coming. And because the winds are coming, because you've taken that first step, then all of a sudden that sail inflates, and guess what? Now you're moving, and now you're moving, and now you're moving, and now you're moving. And it's literally one step at a time. But this mistake that we make is we sit there and think, oh, but I need to know how to do all of this stuff. And it's just not true. It is not true. I can't tell you how many motivational speakers I've seen sit there and say, You've got to have a plan. You've got to have the plan. You've got to have the plan. Wrong answer. I'm just telling you, you don't need a plan. I can give you thousands of examples, literally, in my own life and other people's lives, didn't have a clue how they were going to get from point A to point B, and yet they made it. They made it. How? Because they just knew this is what they needed to do. They had no clue how it was going to look, who's going to show up, how it was going to happen, but guess what? They're doing it, and because of the fact of who and what they are, and they set the intention, this is what I'm doing, guess what? The universe is like, yeah, what he said. Yeah, that's what we're doing. He said that's where they wanted to go. We got to, come on, guys, let's go. And that's what happens. That's the way it works. But we don't know that. We're not taught that, right? And so as a result of it, what happens is so many people, and I cannot tell you from being a coach, I can't tell you how many people just sit there and go, I really, 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 really want to go there. And that's as far as it goes. That's it. It shuts you down. Sacred action is critically, critically, critically important. The second thing is be consistent. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not saying it's got to be absolutely perfect. I think sometimes, even myself, if you suffer at all from perfectionism, we think it's got to be absolutely perfect, and it doesn't. All we need to do is do consistent action. As long as you're taking one step further, one step further, one step further, one step further. I had this dream of what I'm doing right here, right now, when I was 16 years old. I just turned 60. Well, almost 61 now. And trust me when I tell you I've had my doubts, I've had my concerns. I didn't believe it. I didn't really think I could actually do this. But if it's one thing that I never, ever, ever did was stop. I never stopped, ever. Even in my darkest of days, even in my deepest struggles, my deepest pains, even when I was in the corner of a room, balled up, on the ground, in tears for hours because of whatever was going on, I never gave up, ever. I've been doing this long. I kept taking little itty-bitty steps, even when I didn't feel like I could do that. I kept doing it, and I kept doing it, and I kept doing it, and I kept doing it, right? This is my dream, one of many dreams, but it's one of the things that I consistently did, take consistent action. And then the third thing, which drives people absolutely nuts, is guess what? Relax. Stop freaking out about it. When you set that intention and you start walking towards that thing, whatever it is that you're going to do, I'm going to tell you something. It will happen. It doesn't have a choice. It has to show up. But guess what we do? This is hard. This isn't working. I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing it right. I got to be doing this. I should be doing something different. And then guess what happens? Then the ego shuts you down and you quit taking consistent action and you let go of whatever it is you're trying to manifest in your life. That's what happens, right? Relax. Stop. Shut this thing off. And just keep moving forward, keep moving forward, keep moving forward. Keep taking that sacred action. Then I shared with you my calling this year. One of the things I wanted to do was to take care of myself better physically. And I started moving down that road, and I shared with you some of the different things that started to show up out of nowhere. Different people, different books, different conversations, talking with friends, and the next thing you know, I've got all this information coming to me, and the next thing you know, I'm starting to do stuff towards taking better care of myself. Went into the details of that last week. So we went into that. What I'm going to share with you is that each and every one of you has a calling that's going on right now, and I wanted to have somebody come up who has had an amazing calling. And by the way, this person isn't the only one. I've had several conversations with you all. It's amazing how this is happening and how different it is for each and every one of you. This one happens to be something near and dear to my heart because it really, really made me laugh when it's happened. So about 2.5 or 3 years ago, Troy, our buddy, I'm going to have him come up here in a minute, I get a call from him. And he says, hey, I've been following you online for a while now. And he said, I need to come and talk to you. And I said, yeah, cool. Come on in. We'll have a talk. And so on that day, I remember sitting in my office, I look outside, and all of a sudden I see this dude get out of a car, and I'm not kidding you, he's got 2 boxes of books. I mean, it looked like this. And he comes in, and he sits down in my office, and he sets them on the desk, and I say, yeah, what's going on? He goes, I don't know, man. I was hoping you could tell me, but all I know is something has told me to read all of these books, and I've read all of them within the last 6 months. And I mean, there are probably 30 books sitting there. The thing that was fascinating to me was I looked and I had read pretty much every single one of those books. So I just told him, hey, man, we gotcha. And so I wanted to have Troy come up because I wanted to actually talk to him a little bit about his calling. Yeah, let's welcome Troy to the stage. Great to see you. So I'm just curious, I would love to know, what in your mind was the thing that when you all of a sudden realized, hey, man, so I don't know, but something is going on. Could you talk about that for just a second?
Yeah, there's those set of circumstances just led me to have almost like a complete break from who and what I was. Things were happening. I was meeting people that were saying things. My life was beginning to just fall apart. Just didn't really make sense. I knew there was so much more underneath all of the regular day-to-day, and some of the things are pretty unique that I won't share, but it led me to an absolute state of confusion. There had to be more. I knew there was more. Like most of you grew up in a church as a child, and some parts of that just never made total sense, like when there's these people that are okay and these other ones are not okay. I mean, that internal inconsistency. And one thing led me into, the first person that I listened to was a really well-known author who had, what's the name of the book? Can't remember. I just listened to a guy who basically had a mental breakdown and also woke up and suddenly had an instantaneous realization that everything around him was one thing. He knew that it was all connected, and he couldn't describe how it was. He said he basically had a mental breakdown, and realized that there must be more to this life than the ups and the downs and the pains and the love and the whatever they are, breakups or the disappointments. There's just so much more to this. And through that process, I'm listening to him and listening to his audiobook, but it didn't all register. But something nudged me to keep looking, and I came across this book called Reality Unveiled. And it really described how, basically in our last 20 years here on the planet, many, many physicists all around the world, all around the globe, have now agreed that underneath all of this, the infinitesimal, the smallest possible thing that can be detected by scientists, it's all one thing. It's all just energy. And the only thing that makes the chair, or a stone, or Mike and I look different, is that this energy vibrates at different levels. And these physicists have all gone so far as to say, we think that this energy that's everywhere, at a level we can't see but is completely consistent, we think it's consciousness. In other words, it is the creation, and creation never stopped. And so then I'm thinking, my God. So in that moment, I felt myself, like other people have described their spiritual awakening, I just blew out in all directions, up, down, left, right. Suddenly, I was like, wait a minute, you mean I'm literally attached to everything, and everything is literally attached to me? And that's when my heart blew up. And suddenly I realized I couldn't have anything but unconditional love for everything around me. My whole world turned into unconditional love. And that was amazing, which led me to even more books, which then led me to go back into the Bible and read it differently and take out the parts that were completely nonsensical. And I thought there has to be a place, a community, maybe a church that believes this or knows about it. Because it's actually in so many books. It's in music now, I've discovered. Lyrics that were written decades ago. People know that this is going on, and even if they don't come right out and say, I had a spiritual awakening, they know it's deep inside. So when I came here, it was amazing because this is it. These are the teachings. They say, finding your tribe. So the people that are in my life now, I mean, you and I have gotten so close.
Absolutely.
And we share so many thoughts and ideas with each other. We just keep educating ourselves, and it just reinforces the love. Because when we walk out of these doors, and I continue on in my job and my life, I still get swept up in the folks who, come into contact with me who are either, narcissistic or just Debbie Downers, or they inflate something and make it way bigger than it needs to be, or they just don't do it out of a sense of love. They say things which seem hurtful and negative, and so I have to have those experiences as well. So even though I've gone through this incredible experience, coming back here and being a part of this on Sundays, I then take some of those messages, and it reminds me to be silent, to shut my brain off at times and go back within that heart space to really feel that soul. And I've learned new ways to connect with my soul, the tools, that I start using that, more often day in and day out. And so as a result of that, since I've been here the last 2.5 years, I'm just getting deeper and deeper. I'm more in control every day of remembering who and what I am. And so my conversations are now better. They're calmer. I don't hardly get upset the way I used to, and certainly I kind of laugh about most people who do, not for any other reason other than it's almost like it's reminding me of who I was, the way I used to behave, the way I used to peace, just day in and day out, and being happy and loving everybody and everything.
So a couple things I just want to mention to everybody. Troy is an attorney. So his whole world was, and then all of a sudden he was basically having this awakening, and the conversation would tell him, you're not going to get where you're wanting to go. It ain't going to happen here.
Yeah.
It's not. It's going to happen down here.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to, just for a second, was this journey linear?
You could look at it that way, linear.
Yeah.
But it's almost like it's circular, like a vortex. You can have highs, and you can feel like you take a step back once or twice. But yet, at the same time, the steps you take forward far outweigh like you said. I've been a doubting Thomas. I mean, when this first started happening, I was resisting. I was not allowing. My brain, my ego, as you just mentioned earlier, was absolutely pushing back on this, which is why when I read these books, and I had other people I was sharing it with saying, oh, well, be careful. It might be the devil. I'm like, oh, come on. So when I grabbed these books and brought them in, and you're like, yep, we've seen this before. We know where you're at. We got you. Yeah. It was the assurance that I needed to allow me to keep pushing forward. Yeah. But it was not always straight linear. Yeah. You had these moments where you had to take the next step. You had to allow. You had to trust. I'll never forget the moment I was driving to work in the midst of this spiritual awakening, and one of the biggest problems I had is that the person I was with was having me doubt myself, almost like gaslighting me because they didn't know any better. And I was driving alone to work in the morning, and I remember I heard this voice very clearly say, trust yourself. And probably the biggest takeaway that anybody has, if they're doubtful, is that there's a part inside of you, and you do have to let that ego go and trust yourself. You actually know the way. The soul in you knows.
Yeah. Talk about... So I keep hearing thoughts or the ideas of like nudging and stuff like that. To me, when I think of that, I think about intuition. Talk to me about your intuition.
Well, certainly the intuition part for me is a couple of different things. When you always wonder, is that my brain telling me to do that? Is that my mind? And which mind are we talking about? The universal higher mind, the higher self perhaps? I mean, where do these ideas come from? Or am I just making this stuff up? And I think that's where, your idea of relaxing, first of all, just relax. I think you need to almost, in my mind now, I'm to a point where my intuition is more like allowing. So, being observant about what's going on around you and allowing what's really in front of you to happen and to take action on what's in front of you. Because lots of times you may pray for a certain thing or wish or hope or feel like you're going to be in the vibration of this thing that you really, really want, but it might show up differently than the way you're asking and yet still take you there. So the allowing is my own intuition. I'm not hard and fast onto it's got to be a certain way or it's got to work out a certain way. So now I still take a step forward and I allow my intuition to guide me there. But one of the things that recently happened was I've made the decision to move to Nashville. A couple of different things happened which led me to this decision. Ironically, for the first time in my life, I do it without having a plan. No specific job, but as an attorney, one of the things I wished I could have done far earlier in my career was to engage in the area of law like music and entertainment, which I started playing drums when I was 5. Music is a big passion of mine, and I was encouraged that if I'm making this move to Nashville, why don't I maybe look at practicing in entertainment law and pursue that music? And then the friend of mine who knew I was moving to Nashville, knew I wanted to do music, suddenly said, "But there's something about Georgia. Have you ever thought of Georgia?" And I'm like, "Now wait a minute. I'm going to Nashville, and now you're talking about Georgia. Like, that makes no sense to me." I'm like, "Okay." And then a couple weeks later, the friend brought it up again. "Hey, have you looked into Georgia?" I'm like, "You need to let this go. I don't even know that I like Georgia, and I don't know anything about Georgia." But then I started seeing it synchronistically on license plates. I started hearing Georgia on my mind on the radio, on advertisements. The other person started hearing it and asked me a third time, "What about Georgia?" So finally, when I did have some time alone, kind of in a moment of silence, which is usually when I try to figure out what's going on, I picked up my phone. I said, "Okay." So I typed in Google Georgia music law, and I hit return. And one of the very first search results that came up was Georgia music law and a law firm called, and my last name is Scott, and this law firm is called the Scott Law Team. So then I'm thinking, well, I'm still not high on Georgia, but I'll read what it has to say. So it's an entire webpage that talks about Georgia music law and how we represent artists in the Atlanta area and film and entertainment, because there's a big film complex there as well. And I'm just thinking, okay, yeah, but what's this firm all about? So then I go back and I click to the firm's main web page. And apparently, this is a law firm based in Florida, on the ocean side, and in Jupiter, Florida. And they actually specialize in labor law. And the ironic thing is, I've spent the last 25 years of my life doing labor law. And where I hope to have a part-time residence someday, even if it's just a vacation 2 or 3 months to get out of the cold weather, was going to be the ocean side of Florida. So then I read about the founder of the firm. Her name is Colleen Scott. And I decided, okay, well, this is too much to ignore. So I drafted a short email to Colleen, and pretty soon we're on the phone together, and one thing led to another. And now we're to the point where Colleen says to me, "As soon as you get to Nashville, let me know. I'm going to start sending you a bunch of labor work to get you going. And yeah, I'd love to expand my firm into music law in Nashville. So I want to partner with you when you get there, and we'll see where this goes."
Yeah, and when I hear that story, it just makes me smile, because do you notice what he didn't do? Well, this makes no sense. I'm not going to do it. Well, how am I going to get? No, he just followed it. That's what he did, and I think that's one of the things that makes it so beautiful. Anything else? So what I'm sharing with you is there's a handful of you that have come up to me, and this kind of thing is happening right here, right now, in your life. And you're going like, wow, what do I do? Breathe. Breathe. But also understand that it's something that you signed up for. It's something that for some of us, it was something that we knew was not going to happen till later in our life. For whatever reason, we had to go through what we needed to go through and have that experience of going through it. But then we agreed that at a certain point in time, and so with Troy and his projection and everything else like that, from the moment that started to happen for him, that was 2.5 years ago. Up here, right now, you're looking at a different human being, completely different than he was 2.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so the final thing I guess I think would be awesome to hear from you is, what would you tell you, the 2.5 years ago you, what would you tell that part of you? What would you say to yourself now that you've been through what you've been through?
I know exactly what I'd say. That soft, quiet voice that tells you that there is a really important aspect of why we are here, and there's a reason for it. you need to get that out and listen to it. You and each of us, I mean, I now know that we're all identically the same, and no matter what the experience, I would say that there is a way to move you to a spot where you can start living the peace, the love, all that stuff we read about that we wanted, the wonderful stories we heard about, whether it be Jesus or other teachers, heaven on earth. I don't even hardly watch the news anymore. It doesn't matter what the news is. It really doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is this understanding of the soul inside of you, and it will just start to change everything about your day-to-day. And magic now happens to me all the time, multiple times a day. There's so many more things I could say. There's so many more synchronicities. There's so much more wonder. It's like it's magic. I didn't even have to wait for Jesus to come through the clouds. It can be already here. It's already here.
Amen. You're amazing.
Yeah, so
We're really going to miss you.
amazing place.
What do you think? Sound pretty amazing? Get some nuggets out of there. Is that pretty good? You know, this dance that we're all doing, there's a purpose for it. And in my opinion, there's also a reason why a lot of people are walking in those doors now. Many of you have only been here for a couple of months. And in my mind, it's going to continue to grow and continue to grow and continue to grow, because my belief is that there's a consciousness that is being born here on the planet, and all of us, regardless of who you are deciding at this point in time, it's time. And so just like Troy, he didn't know. And I'm telling you, he was all over the place, right? And it's like, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And if anything, I leave you with that note, that you're in the right place. There's no mistakes on what's going on in your life, that even though it seems a little bit weird or wonky for some of you, it's okay, that you're in the process of making a transition, that you're exactly where you need to be, that you can be held here. You're not going to be judged, shamed, or blamed here, because the community that we have here can support that kind of energy for the people that are looking to make those kinds of transitions in their life, because that's what we're about. Only we're about doing it together. We're not afraid to have those kinds of conversations. We're not afraid for it to look a little bit different for everybody. It can look different for everybody. But regardless of what it may look like for you, just know that this is happening right here, right now, and there's a very, very, very specific reason for that. And that's simply because we finally are starting to believe on a collective conscious level everything that we've been told by all the masters. We're finally understanding it, and it's starting to show up on this planet. And you came here because you wanted to remember that, and you wanted to experience on this planet, right here, right now, which many, many, many people have said is the greatest time on this planet. It's the age of Aquarius. It's the age of awakening. That is happening. So put your seatbelt on, get ready, and just know that you're okay. Know that you're loved. Know that you're held. Know that above all things, we're one. That, to me, is a really cool thing to be able to do together in community. And we each have our own little part. Everybody does it a little bit differently. Having said that, I love you. I'm so grateful for your presence here. We are so blessed and so lucky to have you here, each and every one of you, for every single thing that you bring. We are incredibly, incredibly, incredibly blessed. God bless, namaste, and namaste.
Hey, it's Reverend Mike here. I just wanted to stop for a moment before you get on with your day, and thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. It means the world to us, and I just wanted to let you know if there's anything that we can do to make your experience even better, please do not hesitate to reach out by going to our website. I also wanted to offer you the opportunity for us to get together and sit down so I could get to know you a little bit better and answer any questions that you have. I can either do that by either getting together in person, have a cup of coffee, or we can meet online via Zoom. If you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach me at michael@courage2thrive.com. And lastly, if you find these messages are helping you, we would be tremendously grateful if you'd consider donating to the center. The best and the easiest way to do that is simple. Just go to our website. Again, thank you so much. Hope you have a great day. Hope you're doing well. God bless, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye now.